Hey, you may have heard of the Times talk that was going to occur between Charlamagne the God and Kanye talking about mental health specifically for like an hour, which would have been a really exciting conversation. As we know from the Charlamagne and Kanye interview that came out on May 1st, the two have a good chemistry. Charlamagne asked Kanye some solid questions, and Kanye responded well to Charlamagne in that interview. To have them sitting down and talking for an hour about mental health, especially in the wake of Ye and Kids See Ghost and everything that Kanye's been saying, that would have been amazing to watch. But unfortunately, it got canceled like the day before it was supposed to happen. And it was supposed to be the start of a press run for Charlemagne's new book about anxiety and his living with anxiety and working through it, and this discussion he wants to have about mental health. And because the talk didn't happen, the reason for it not happening has ended up becoming a talking point on the press tour. So last night, Charlamagne actually went on to Colbert and talked about why the event with Kanye didn't happen. He talked about it with The Post today. He's talked about it with, I guess it's been the main talking point so far, leading into then him discussing his history with anxiety. So in the Post interview, he said, and the article is titled Charlamagne the God, Leave Kanye West Alone, which is a little dramatic given what the article actually has, which isn't anything that specific. That really just refers to if somebody is telling us that they suffer from some type of mental illness, as West has with his bipolar diagnosis, shouldn't we be a little more gentle with our approach? I think that's completely fair, and part of the conversation that has completely been missing from anybody talking about Kanye. It's either Kanye just needs to do better, like fuck him, or Kanye's crazy, fuck him. There's not a middle ground of like, maybe we should consider this and, understand that there's something going on and maybe not fully blame him, make him responsible, but like, maybe that there's more of a reason to what's being said than he's just an utter asshole and awful. A middle ground, just some sort of middle ground. That's all that I want. But then Charlamagne himself went on to say, we honestly shouldn't be paying attention to nothing Kanye West says until he actually goes out there and gets the help we all think he needs. Which, so bothersome. On the one hand, like, yeah, we should be a little bit more gentle, as Charlamagne's saying. On the other hand, he then goes full, we shouldn't listen to nothing Kanye says. Not one thing. Even if he's making good points, like, fuck that. He's not getting the help we all think he needs. So fuck him. Even though all of us don't know shit about Kanye. We don't know his diagnosis. We don't know how he is in the home. We don't know how much is him stirring up publicity, how much is just, him as a person and quirkiness versus mental illness. And yet Charlamagne's saying, until Kanye gets the help we all think he needs. I think this is a perfect example of the monolithic type of thinking. Like, we all think you need this. Despite what you think, it doesn't matter what these other people think, like me. Charlamagne would tell me to shut up, I'm guessing. But because the majority of us think you need this help, you should just get the help. And until then, you're kicked out of the group. Like, you're silent. We're not going to listen to anything you say. Like, that's like 2 steps forward with the first point and then leaps and bounds back with the second point. So on the interview with Colbert, he talked about it a little bit more, and it's even more bothersome. So when he was talking, he went out and started with the joke, me and Kanye have a relationship, not as close as him and Trump, ha ha ha, but we have a relationship. Every interview that he's done over the past couple of years, including the interview I did with him earlier this year, he's always talking about his mental health. He's always talking about being bipolar, being on medication. I don't know if he was always talking about that for the last couple of years, but in 2018, for sure. I felt like everybody was bypassing that conversation. Yes. Charlamagne, who interviewed West while he was still on his medication, said that recent interviews have skipped over the fact that the rapper has stopped taking his meds. When I saw him in the White House, he said he wasn't on his meds because he had been misdiagnosed and he didn't have bipolar and it was sleep deprivation. So I was like, I think he needs to figure that out. What I'm trying to do, which is elevate the conversation about mental health in the Black community and trying to eradicate the stigma around mental health, I just didn't think it would be a good conversation. It would be a distraction. I mean, there's so much opportunity to still have a positive conversation with Kanye in that situation. You know, what did the second opinion do to you? How did you feel when you thought you were diagnosed bipolar versus how you feel now that you aren't bipolar? I'm starting to get words jumbled in my head. How do you feel now that you aren't bipolar? Like, what's the experience having gone through that, and how do you feel now? How does that change how you interact with others? How does that change your relationship with yourself? How does that view how others were treating you? What does it mean to have sleep deprivation? How does that feel in comparison to being bipolar? Sleep deprivation is absolutely an aspect of mental health. I'm somebody that's been diagnosed with severe sleep deprivation. My stumbling over words here, typically I'd just stop the video and start over from the beginning. But I think it's kind of fitting because I'm often a sleep deprived person. I'll go to bed at 4 a.m. I'll wake up at sometimes 9, 10, 11, 12, 1, sleep way too fucking long or not enough. And sometimes when it gets late at night, 12:02 right now, I'm not operating at my best. And that's also a mental health thing that affects you and has a major impact. When I was severely sleep deprived, oh my God, I was a mess, a zombie person. Pale as can be, making no sense, blipping in and out where I would just completely lose consciousness, but I guess continue to be talking. I would get up for class sometimes in college and have no memory. I'd be brushing my teeth and then I'd be waking up in bed 6 hours later, completely different clothes on. Not sure if I went somewhere, if I just went back to bed, what was going on. I still don't know what happened on some of those days. Shit was insane and continues to be something that I deal with. And Kanye being diagnosed with sleep deprivation and having to work through that and work with that is a very viable conversation, as well as putting that in contrast with bipolar. When you thought you were bipolar, what was that experience like? Now that you find out that you are sleep deprived, what is that experience like? How do you compare and contrast the two? What has that taught you about your own mental health, the mental health of others? How do you approach that? How do you wish people would have treated you? How were your interactions with doctors? What would it have been like had your misdiagnosis stood and you were just living for years with that and never got it checked? How would that make you feel? Why is it important then for people in the Black community to not only focus on their mental health, but to regularly check up on it and to take it seriously? Because even somebody at Kanye's level could be misdiagnosed and have that affect their life, or set up a time bomb of not treating what is bothering them. Or could Kanye, as Kiana, I forget her last name, this woman for Complex wrote an article about how Kanye not being bipolar is a betrayal, as she's somebody with bipolar and as he's just now in denial. And that's unfair. She was also in denial at a point in time, but learned to accept it. And now that Kanye's in denial, how dare he? Which, the hypocrisy there, that she's not allowing him or having sympathy or empathy for him going through something she went through, but just wants him to be better than what she was and perfect. Problematic. But that's also a conversation to have that Charlamagne could have had with Kanye. Hey man, do you think that there's a chance you sought out a doctor that would tell you what you wanted to hear? Denial is often part of this. How does that make you feel? That this could be a symptom of something that you wish you didn't have? And really hear Kanye's thoughts on that and see somebody going through this, reacting in real time. I think that would also be inspirational, helpful. But you see Charlamagne saying that he has this conversation that he wants to have. And because Kanye didn't fit into that, nixed it. And then he goes on to say, I was trying to have a clear conversation because there's nothing more powerful than watching two brothers like me on there talking about my anxiety and my PTSD and trauma from things that happened to me when I was younger, and him talking about being bipolar. Could it Kanye have talked about his own trauma, other aspects of his mental health? You know, anxiety and PTSD, I think, are right there with bipolar, sleep deprivation, grief, extreme grief from Kanye's mom dying, and guilt. There's lots of things they still could have talked about. But then he also said that he called Kanye's team, and Kanye's team were all kind of relieved. And when Charlamagne told Kanye, like, Kanye just took it well and was like, okay. But he said he called Kanye on the weekend, which would have been, what, the 17th was I'm not going to be able to do this in my head. Was it a Monday, a Tuesday, a Wednesday, a Tuesday? Anyway, he said he called Kanye on the weekend, which would have meant something like the 14th, 15th. And I kind of secretly feel like, no evidence for this, but I kind of feel like that Kanye was in Africa and Charlamagne was worried that Kanye wasn't going to show up. And because of that, Charlamagne's just like, I'm going to cancel. I'm going to say it's because of this. Like, these reasons here, I don't think he's in a place to have the conversation I want to have. But really, I just think Kanye might not show up because this is more important to me than it might be to him, and he was doing me a favor. He's in Africa. He's only been there for 5 days. He could be there for another 2 weeks. I have no idea. I'm going to get ahead of this and cancel. No evidence for that, and it's a wild, wild hot take, but I kind of believe it. But if we're taking Charlamagne at his word, I still just think there were conversations he could have had, and I wished he would have stayed in the batter's box and had those conversations, especially with how good of an interviewer he is, how smart of a person he is. I think he could have found a solid conversation to have with Kanye. It may not have been the one that he idealized in his head, but I think it would have been one that still achieved what he wanted to achieve, which is having a progressive talk about mental health. So maybe another day, but that does it for this video. Hope you enjoyed, and I want to do a 3 things next. I think I'm going to do only one tomorrow, but if you have a recommendation for a song you want me to do a 3 things on, post that in the comments, and I'll get to that after only one. If you're enjoying the channel, please take the time to subscribe, and yeah.